Episode 8, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. The Doctor and fam head to Villa Diodati in the year 1816 to the infamous night where Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, Claire Clairmont and Dr. John Polidori will all gather to exchange horror stories, eventually resulting in the creation of one of the grandfathers of modern horror, Frankenstein. However, when they arrive, while their guests were seemingly about to engage in some horror readings and the like, once the fam arrive, they're just like, "Oh no, we need to teach our new guests how to dance." It's like, we came for the horror. Give us the horror. Even the Doctor tries to push it that way. Like, how about creating the most gruesome horror story the world has ever known? It's like, oh, we could learn to dance again. It's like, come on. But thankfully, our wishes for horror aren't denied for long, as the group soon discovers mysterious things going on in Villa Diodati. The house seemingly seems to shift. The Doctor feels that something is not quite right, and once they try to escape the rooms, they find themselves constantly going in circles, round and around. I mean, there's a whole part where Graham tries to find the toilet and then ends up going up a set of stairs twice, and honestly, that's quite funny. But then mysterious things begin happening, especially with the absence of Mary Shelley's lover and future husband, Percy Shelley. He's said to be kind of away writing, or presumed to be away writing at a lodge down the way. And he doesn't show up, and suddenly he becomes a much bigger part of things than they thought. And the gang is ultimately confronted by a villain they have been warned about, and the Doctor must soon make a devastating choice. Whether she sacrifices the life of someone very important in our history in order to prevent a certain event in the future, or whether she protects this person who is part of our history and then ultimately has to face a more dark and mysterious future. Now, for those who yet haven't seen the episode, if you haven't done so, I'm going to spoil things fairly quickly, so you might want to go off and watch the episode first if you haven't already, in which, why are you here? But I'll give you a minute to leave if you haven't already. So 3, 2, 1. Still here? Good. Now, there was a theory that that was going around the internet in the last few weeks that possibly the Doctor's enemies of the Cybermen were going to inspire Frankenstein. We knew the Cybermen were going to be returning this later on this series, or at some point in this series, and this assumption that the Cybermen might inspire Frankenstein, it wasn't exactly an unfair assumption. I mean, you can definitely see the parallels in between the Cybermen and Frankenstein, so it seemed like a fair guess. However, on social media, that theory was seemingly quickly debunked fairly on, I think, by Chris Chibnall, who just said, no, it's not quite what we mean. But it seems we might have been more right than we thought, as it seems the thing causing all the horror is the enemy that the gang have been warned about, the lone Cyberman. And he's specifically after Percy Shelley, because Percy found something recently, something called the Siberian, and the lone Cyberman wants to retrieve it, even if it does mean the cost of Percy's life. Now, the gang were warned earlier this series by Captain Jack Harkness not to give the lone Cyberman what it wants. And, as we said, the Doctor is soon faced with a terrible choice. Does she attempt to destroy the Siberian, and in the process kill Percy, in order to stop the Cybermen in the future, or does she give the lone Cyberman the Siberian and ultimately have to face the Cybermen later on? I won't give away much, but it is a pretty heartbreaking decision. But they do kind of manage to give piece together things quite well with the Cyberman in there. And the new design of the Cyberman, it it's quite chilling. In that you can clearly see, we know the Cybermen are getting a big redesign. We've seen it in all the promotional material. We have seen they're going to get something of a new design, which I think is kind of a combination of the 2013 Cybermen and the ones from 1975. But then this version of the Cyberman, you can clearly see the 2013 designs in the body, and then kind of half of the face on one side that is the classic Cyberman head. But then on the other side, you can see his human face underneath, and just how kind of terribly scarred he is. And for an episode that's supposed to be based around horror, it kind of fits well in that it's a Cyberman, but you can still see the pieces underneath, and ugh, it is really quite chilling. Plus, they do manage to tie him in quite well to the story, in that on this dark and mysterious night, in the original history, it was said that this, well, I'm not even sure it's night, but it was a dark and dreary day, which you could argue is just storms, but then they said that it was possibly caused by the eruption of Mount Tombara, which was causing kind of severe weather things. But then they kind of tied in that it's more a move done by the lone Cyberman and the Siberian in order to kind of keep everyone there, to stop them from leaving the villa, in order to kind of keep them there until it can get the Siberian. And wow, I mean, it's really quite chilling. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if all the Cybermen stuff kind of fits together with the whole horror aspect. But for a horror style episode, I think it's done fairly well. I mean, if you're gonna do an episode based around horror, doing it around this event, it's actually a pretty good choice. In that, as we said, there is this. This is some of the greatest writers in this part of history coming together to kind of create horror stories. So to have them in an episode, and it's really done rather well. And back to the original rumour that the Cybermen would inspire Frankenstein, you can kind of argue that they do, in that when Mary Shelley ultimately stands up to it, you can see the kind of inspiration. Her description of the Cybermen is almost kind of dead on for Frankenstein. So, for a rumour that was seemingly debunked fairly quickly, it actually does prove slightly to be true. But then this will all lead up into the final two-part finale of Series 12, Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. Which, yeah, I think I'm getting a bit more excited for. So, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. What do I think overall? Well, I will admit, I don't think it's supposed to be the strongest lead in an episode, but you know what? I think it's a pretty good episode overall. It does well with its horror style elements. They don't necessarily all fit together perfectly, but they do so surprisingly well. Well, I can't wait for next time. Ascension of the Cybermen. Until then...